God is jealous. Now, this sort of objection, and can be presented a variety of ways. God does this, or God feels this way, or God claims the sort of things about him that I don't like. Therefore, he doesn't exist. Well, first of all, there's a few problems with that sort of objection to God's existence. If you allow the existence of God, then you've admitted the very thing that there's an actual objective standard to what's good and what isn't. And if his nature exists, if you acknowledge there is a deity out there with a conscious nature that includes jealousy, then you're the problem, because jealousy would then be a good thing if utilized and determined by God's perfect nature. If he experiences an emotion, it is good in the way he practices it. So the best thing to do with your time isn't to say, that emotion is expressed the same way that I do. Therefore, if God does it, he does it the same way I do, and is therefore wrong. Well, you misunderstand the nature of God as the paragon, the ideal being. But second as well, if God being jealous is something you don't like, then you've admitted that he exists. You can't dislike a non-existent being. Therefore, if your views about him are valid, you're actually admitting the thing you're trying to dismiss, that he exists. So that doesn't really get you anywhere. If you just say there are traits about him that you don't like, then you're the one with the problem, because there's someone bigger than you out there who does exist that you don't like. Me not liking bullies doesn't mean that they cease to exist. But if on the other hand I can prove that these traits are fundamentally incoherent with this kind of being, that's a different story. But just saying that God is jealous isn't, in fact, a dismissal of his existence, because we have to ask, well, what do you mean by jealousy? In jealousy, the first fact on the table is different from envy. Jealousy is a desire for exclusiveness in a relationship, which can be a good thing if you are genuinely the better option for someone in a scenario where they're settling for less than you. Humans can't say this in the case of their relationships, but if on the other hand you can know for certain that God is by definition the best possible relationship, then him being jealous would be rather justified. Also note that jealous isn't the only name that God has for himself. He also is called the Savior, our banner, our protector, our comforter, a warrior, a redeemer, our creator, and others. Tell me, which of those do you say, well, I don't like it, therefore he doesn't exist? Because then we'll just go back to the first three problems. And then lastly, the real issue here is that emotions aren't inherently evil. What you do with them are. If jealousy produces the sort of behavior that causes violence, that causes, the sort of irrational actions that we as human beings perform, then that's one thing. But if on the other hand, the only thing God did with his jealousy is present himself as the better option from the things that are destroying our lives, but ultimately still respects our decisions to walk away from and reject him, that doesn't sound like a very envious person. He has a desire for exclusiveness because he's the only one with the right to say he's the best possible option. If you don't like that, then by all means come to that conclusion. But if someone says, God is jealous, therefore I don't exist, well, I'm sorry, Oprah Winfrey, but this sort of argument ends up admitting the real fact on the table. And if you acknowledge that God exists and that you don't like him, well, that's proof that his jealousy isn't like yours. He'll respect your ability to reject him. But if on the other hand you say, no, these traits are incompatible with God because I don't like them, well, I'm sorry, but you're not the ultimate arbiter of what is good and what is evil. If you look at how God's presented his jealous name, you'd realize that it is very fair and open in people willing to and wanting to reject him, like yourself. If he smitten all of the wicked sinners that would dare to question his goodness, then you wouldn't be here, but you are. And likewise, if you say, well, I don't like God, therefore he doesn't exist, he's still there. This argument doesn't really end up gaining any traction. So, make sure that we understand the basic laws of the English language as well as the Old Testament presentation of God's character and his names, and hopefully this won't end up not only tripping you up, but being used to keep you from a actual conclusion, a worthwhile and reasonable conclusion about the nature of God. Thank you for your time. If you have any sincere questions or would like to be walked through some other examples of things that God does that perhaps don't suit your fancy and how to rationalize them. I'll be happy to discuss them with you in the comments below. But until next time, I just want to remind you that we can, in fact, walk through these reasons in believing in God, and I'll look forward to discussing more of these objections with you next time. Until then, God bless you.